The air inside the alien war hall was heavy with smoke and pride. Bright lights from glowing crystals hung above the audience, casting blue shadows on the floor. Dozens of powerful alien leaders sat in their high seats, clapping, growling, and roaring in celebration. At the center of it all stood Jace Thorne, a human soldier from Earth. Dressed in worn armor covered in dust and battle scars, he had done something no one thought possible. He had led a group of human and alien prisoners to freedom, escaping from one of the most feared warlords in the galaxy. And for that, he was now being rewarded. A loud voice echoed through the hall, "Human Jace Thorne." The alien commander announced, "You have shown courage and strength, so as a gift, we present to you a rare prize, a living treasure, taken from the darkest worlds." From the shadows, two guards dragged a chained figure into the light. It was a Gurlan alien woman with soft, glowing blue skin, her face covered in dirt, her body shaking. Her wrists were wrapped in metal cuffs that glowed red, and a collar was locked tight around her neck. She didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't scream. She simply looked at the ground, as if life had already left her. The room cheered. "She is yours now," the commander said. "Do what you will. She won't resist, she cannot speak." Jace didn't move, his fists clenched, his eyes studied the girl closely. She was young, maybe 20 in human years. She was beautiful, yes, but not in the way the crowd was thinking. She was wounded, broken. Yet there was something powerful still inside her eyes. Jace stepped forward. Slowly, he reached down not to grab her chain, but to lift her chin gently. Her eyes met his. For the first time, and in that moment, he saw it. She wasn't empty. She was hiding pain, hiding strength, hiding something that had been taken from her again and again. "What's her name?" Cease asked. The alien commander laughed. "She doesn't need one. She's yours now. Name her if you want." Jace turned to face the crowd. "I don't want a prize," he said loudly. "I came here for peace, not a slave." The cheers died. Some aliens laughed nervously. Others growled in confusion. The commander narrowed his eyes. "She is already yours, human. Whether you accept or not, refuse this gift and insult our honor." Jace looked back at the girl. She had not spoken, not moved, but her eyes, they were wet tears. He took a deep breath. "Then I'll accept her," he said. "But not as a slave." The crowd didn't understand, but they clapped anyway. To them, it didn't matter. She was just a thing. Jace walked over, placed his jacket over her shoulders, and gently unlocked the chain from her ankle. She didn't resist, but she flinched when he touched her collar. "It's okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." The guards left, the hall emptied, and soon they were alone. In a cold, silent room. He helped her sit down and gave her water. She stared at it for a moment before drinking quickly, like someone who hadn't tasted clean water in weeks. "My name's Jace," he said softly. "Can you understand me?" She looked up at him. Her lips trembled, but made no sound. She nodded slowly, just once. He smiled. "All right. That's a start." He looked at the glowing collar, still locked around her neck. He had no idea how to remove it, but he would find a way, as she curled up in the corner of the room, wrapped in his jacket. Her eyes never left him, not in fear, but confusion. Why didn't he touch her? Why didn't he command her? Why didn't he treat her like the others had? Outside, the alien world was loud, cruel, and full of shadows. But inside that quiet room, something new had begun. Not ownership, not power, but maybe hope. Jace didn't know who she really was. He didn't know what they had done to her, but deep down, he had already made a choice. He would protect her. He would not chain her again. And he would never treat her like a reward. He didn't know it yet, but this broken alien girl would change his life forever. And one day, he would call her more than just free. He would call her wife. The room was quiet, but her silence was louder than a scream. The alien girl sat in the corner, still wearing the collar, her hands wrapped tightly around her knees. She didn't cry, didn't move, just watched Jace with wide, tired eyes. He sat across the room, pretending not to notice how she kept flinching every time he shifted his weight. He wasn't a danger to her, but she didn't know that. Not yet. Jace had seen fear before. He had seen prisoners, soldiers, even children stare with empty eyes after losing everything. But this was different. This was a soul that had been chained long before her body ever was. He opened a small ration pack and placed it in front of her, not close enough to scare her, but just far enough that she could reach it without getting near him. Then he stood and walked to the far side of the room. Back turned, hands open, a long pause. Then movement, slow, cautious, like a hunted animal. She crawled forward and grabbed the food, stuffing it into her mouth like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Still, not a word. Later that night, Jace sat on the edge of his cot, speaking into his COMM recorder. Day 1, he said quietly. Alien female, unknown species, unknown name, condition, malnourished, mute, mentally scarred, gifted no. Given as a reward by syndicate lords. Possibly a test or a trap. He looked back at her. She was now lying on the floor. Not sleeping, just staring at the ceiling like she was somewhere else. He turned off the recorder. Who are you? He whispered, but of course she didn't answer. The next morning, Jace woke to a sound. A small clinking noise, like metal brushing stone. He sat up and saw her trying to walk. She was barefoot, thin legs shaking, arms out for balance, but the heavy collar and shock cuffs around her wrists made it almost impossible. Jace rushed forward. Wait, don't hurt yourself. She collapsed with a gasp, falling into him. Her hands gripped his shirt, but not for support. She was scared, shaking, breathing fast, her eyes locked on his. They were filled with pain, not from falling, but from remembering something. And then, for the first time, she made a sound, not words, but a strange, muffled whisper in her alien tongue. Soft and broken like it hadn't been used in a long time. Jace froze. You can speak. She backed away quickly, curling into herself. No more words, no more sounds. Just fear. Again, hours passed. Jace did something strange. He left the door open, just a little, and walked away. He wanted to see what she would do. She crawled to the doorway slowly, looking outside. Freedom, but also danger. Guards stood outside the building. Alien creatures with red eyes and shock rifles. The girl didn't try to run. She just sat at the edge of the door, looking at the sky like she hadn't seen it in years. Jace returned quietly, holding a blanket. He placed it near her, then sat beside her without saying a word. Together, they watched the twin suns of the alien world dip below the rocks. She slowly leaned toward him. Not much, just a few inches, but it was enough. Enough to say she didn't want to be alone anymore. That night, Jace tried something new. He brought out a translator device, one used for deep alien dialects. He placed it gently near her and pressed record. If you say anything, he said, even one word, this will help me understand you. She stared at the device, then at him. Her lips moved, hesitating, then stopped. Not tonight, but maybe soon. When Jace woke the next day, the device was flashing. He played the message, and a broken voice came through. Name, Syrah. He stared at the speaker. The voice was hers, recorded during the night. It was the first thing she had told him. A name, Syrah. Not slave, not gift, but a real name. And just like that, everything changed. For the first time since she was handed to him like an object. Syrah had spoken, not with her mouth, but but through a whisper recorded on the translator in the middle of the night. Name. Syrah. One name, one word. But for Jace, it was everything. He sat quietly in the corner of the room, listening to the recording again and again. Her voice was soft, weak, but real. It was not a sound of a slave, it was the voice of someone trying to be human again. Even if she wasn't one, he looked over at her. Syrah was still curled on the sleeping mat, pretending to sleep. But Jace noticed her ear twitch slightly when the recording played. She was listening to. He smiled gently. "Good morning." "Syrah," he said. No answer, but her fingers twitched. Just once, that was enough. Later, Jace left the room and went into the small mechanic bay attached to the building. He opened an old supply locker and dug through tools, wires, and scrap parts. He had no idea how to break alien slave collars, but he was a soldier, a fixer, a thinker, and he was angry, not just at the collar, but at the ones who put it on her. The ones who thought giving a living being as a prize was acceptable. He pulled out a plasma torch and some signal jammers. Maybe, just maybe, could disable the lock without hurting her. Back inside, Syrah was still silent. But now, she followed him with her eyes, every step he took. Every tool he picked up. Her gaze didn't leave him. He sat beside her slowly, holding the collar scanner. "I want to take this off," he said softly. "But only if you're ready." Syrah stared at him. She didn't move, didn't nod. But her hands unclenched from the blanket. Her body didn't pull away this time. Jace took that as a yes. He began scanning the collar, watching for signals or traps. There were kill switches, 2 of them. One would cause pain, the other instant death. He paused, his breath catching. They had made it so that if anyone tried to free her without the master code, she could die. Monsters. But Jace wasn't going to stop. He looked into her eyes and whispered, "This will take time. I'll do it right. I promise." For the first time, Syrah blinked slowly, then, softly, her lips moved again. "Okay," she whispered, so low it was almost a breath. Over the next few days, Jace worked silently. He disassembled the shock cuffs first. Those were easier. He clipped wires, bypassed fuses, and finally removed them without hurting her. When the metal dropped from her wrists, she stared at her hands in disbelief, like she hadn't seen her own skin in years. She didn't say anything, but later that night, she folded a blanket and placed it near his cot. A silent thank you. The collar was harder, more complex, more dangerous, but Jace worked every night when she slept, scanning, analyzing, rewiring. On the 6th night, he finally cracked it. One click, one beep. The light on the collar turned from red to green. He rushed to her side. "Syrah," he said, gently touching her shoulder. "I did it." She sat up quickly, startled. But when he touched the collar and it popped open, falling to the floor with a heavy sound, she froze. Her hands slowly reached up to touch her neck. No weight, no burning heat, no pressure. The collar was gone. She stared at him, confused, unsure what to feel. Then, without thinking, she stood on weak legs, trembling, but free. Her first steps were slow. She looked around the room, not as a prisoner anymore, but as someone beginning to wake up. Jace didn't say a word. He just watched as Syrah walked barefoot. Silent Hand stood by the open window. The moonlight touched her blue skin, making her glow. It was like watching a bird stretch its wings after years in a cage. But then, she turned back to him, and for the first time, she asked a question. "Why me?" Her voice was shaky, unsure, but her words were clear. Jace stood and walked to her. He didn't touch her, didn't get too close. He just answered truthfully, "Because you didn't deserve to be in chains," he said. "No one does." Syrah looked down, her fists tightening again. "But I'm broken," she whispered. "They all said so. even I." He interrupted, softly but firmly. "They lied." She stared at him, and for the first time her lips curved. Just a little, a smile, barely there, but it was real. The chains were gone. But Jace knew the real chains, the ones in her heart, would take longer to break. Still, they had begun, one link at a time. The night was calm, but Jace didn't sleep. He sat beside the window, a pulse pistol resting on his knee. Outside, the stars blinked above the alien desert. It looked peaceful, but Jace knew better peace was often just the quiet before trouble began. Syrah slept in the corner, curled under a blanket. Her breathing slow and even. She looked peaceful too. But he remembered how she flinched at loud sounds, how her eyes scanned every room like a hunted animal. She had no chains now, no collar. But fear still followed her like a shadow. Jace sighed and leaned back against the wall. She had spoken yesterday. Smiled even tiny steps, but steps, nonetheless. He'd protect those steps, no matter what it cost. At sunrise, everything changed. A loud knock came at the door, sharp, angry, not friendly. Jace stood instantly. Weapon ready, Syrah jolted upright. Eyes wide with fear, she knew that knock. She'd heard it before. He motioned for her to stay back. Then opened the door just slightly. A tall figure stood outside, dressed in black desert armor. His skin was dark red, face hidden behind a helmet. A bounty hunter, Jace Thorne. The voice hissed through the helmet. "I'm here for the girl." Jace didn't move. "She's not yours," he said calmly. "She's free." The bounty hunter laughed, a low, ugly sound. "Free? No, no. She belongs to the syndicate." He pushed the door open, stepping into the room without permission. Syrah scrambled backward, heart racing. The bounty hunter looked down at her with cold eyes. "Come now, property doesn't get to run." Away, Jace raised his pistol. "Step back," he said. "She's not your property, or anyone's." The bounty hunter tilted his head. "You'd risk your life for a broken alien slave." Jace didn't hesitate. Yes, the fight happened fast. The bounty hunter lunged, swinging a stun blade. Jace dodged and fired. The energy blast grazing the hunter's shoulder. Syrah crouched in the corner, frozen but. Something inside her snapped. She remembered chains, pain, darkness. And now someone else was fighting for her. She grabbed a metal bar from beside the door and threw it. It slammed into the bounty hunter's leg. Causing him to stumble, Jace took the chance, tackling the man to the ground and slamming the butt of his pistol into his helmet. The glass cracked, sparks flew, and the hunter groaned. Falling unconscious, breathing heavily, Jace stood, staring at Syrah. "You helped," he said, surprised. She nodded slowly, still shaking. "I didn't want you to be hurt," she whispered. They dragged the hunter outside, tied him to his own speeder, and set the coordinates far into the desert. He'd live, but he'd think twice before coming back. Back inside, silence filled the room. Jace sat down, wiping blood from his forehead. Syrah approached him slowly with a damp cloth. She pressed it gently to his cut, her hands trembling. I was afraid," she said softly. "But I didn't want to lose you." Jace looked at her. "You won't," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Her eyes searched his face. This wasn't just protection anymore. This was something deeper. Later that evening, Syrah did something she had never done before. She walked to his side, not out of fear. Not because she had to, but because she chose to. She sat beside him on the floor. Leaning against the wall, the twin moons glowed through the window, bathing them in silver light. "I don't understand you," she said quietly. "You don't see me like they do?" Jace turned to her. "How do they see you?" "As a thing," she replied, voice hollow, "a body to own, a tool to use." Jace nodded slowly. And how do you think I see you? Sierra didn't answer right away. Then, like I'm someone, she whispered, even though I don't remember who. Jace smiled gently. Then we'll find her, he said. Together, she didn't cry, but her eyes shimmered. Tears not of sadness, but of release. For the first time, she felt something real. Not chains, not fear, not silence, but safety. And just a little love. The next morning came quietly, with golden sunlight creeping across the desert floor. Jace sat outside the small shelter, sharpening his blade in silence. His mind wasn't calm, too much had changed. Too quickly, behind him, Sierra sat on the edge of the bedroll, awake for hours, but she hadn't spoken, not yet. Something weighed on her heart, and Jace could feel it in the air. She kept replaying the night over and over, the fight, the hunter, and the way Jace looked at her after. She helped. No one had ever looked at her that way. Not with fear, not with disgust, but with something like trust. And now, with the bounty hunter gone and her collar destroyed, she wasn't a slave anymore. She could run, disappear, start over, but deep inside, she didn't want to. Jace stood and walked back in, brushing dust off his shoulders. He offered her a canteen and a small meal pack. You don't have to stay, he said gently. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. Sierra didn't touch the food. Instead, she looked up slowly, her eyes unsure. If I leave, she said quietly, will you forget me? Jace blinked, surprised. No, he said. I could never forget you, Sierra. She looked down at her hands that used to tremble in fear, but now felt steady. Then, almost in a whisper, she asked, then, can I stay? Jace froze. The question felt simple, but to him, it meant everything. She wasn't asking for protection anymore. She was asking for a place, a choice, a future. He smiled. Yes, you can. From that moment, things changed between them. Not all at once, but in small, soft ways. Sierra started helping with food prep. Even if she didn't know how, she tried to clean tools in the mechanic bay, though she dropped most of them. Jace never got mad. He only said, you'll learn. And Sierra smiled more now. One afternoon, while patching the shelter roof, Jace slipped and cut his arm on a jagged edge. He hissed, falling to the ground. Before he could even call out, Sierra was there pressing cloth to the wound, panic on her face. You're bleeding, she said, voice shaking. I've had worse, he replied, wincing. Don't joke, she said, almost angry. You matter. Those words hit harder than the injury. Jace looked into her eyes. They weren't just words of worry. They were the truth. To her, he wasn't just a protector anymore. He was something more. And he was beginning to feel the same. That night, a rare cold wind swept across the desert. They sat close to a small fire, wrapped in shared warmth. Sierra held a mug of heated drink in her hands. Watching the flames dance, I don't know what I'm supposed to be, she whispered. I wasn't born to serve. But I don't remember who I was before they took me. Jace looked at her gently. You don't have to be what they made you, he said. You can be anything you want. She shook her head. I only know how to survive. Nothing else, Jace. Reached over, not touching her, but offering his hand near hers. You're already more than that, he said. You helped me, stood beside me, asked to stay. That's not survival, Sierra. That's choice. She looked at his hand, then slowly, carefully, placed hers on top. Their fingers didn't lock, but the space between them was gone. Later that night, before she fell asleep, she spoke again. Jace, why haven't you asked for anything? Kay blinked, confused. What do you mean? I could have done anything to me when I was given to you. But you didn't, she said. No commands, no orders, no expectations. Jace leaned back, resting against the wall, because I don't want anything from you. he said softly. "Accept your freedom, and maybe your friendship." Syrah's eyes watered, but she didn't cry. Instead, she whispered something so quiet, he almost missed it. "You already have that." And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something tender, fragile, and new. Not master and slave, not protector and protected, but something more honest. Something beginning to feel like love. The sun was harsh that morning, beating down on the sand like a warning. Jace stood just outside the local trader's outpost. With Syrah close behind, her hood was pulled low, hiding most of her glowing blue face. But her eyes stayed fixed on him. This was the first time she'd stepped beyond the safety of their shelter since her chains were removed. She didn't say it aloud, but Jace knew she was afraid. Afraid of being seen, judged, or taken again. But she had come anyway because he asked her to. They needed supplies, fuel cells, clean water, and food. But what Jace didn't expect was trouble waiting inside. The outpost was crowded with beings of every shape and color. Rough voices shouted, trades were made, drinks were spilled. And then came the silence, the kind that only happens when something wrong walks through the set. Syrah stepped inside, her eyes down, and every alien in the room turned to look. Not because she was beautiful, but because they recognized her. Whispers started, "That's Hertha Syndicate girl. She escaped. She's supposed to be dead." Jace stepped in front of her, blocking the stairs, but one voice spoke louder than the rest. "She belongs to the Syndicate." A thick, spiked alien snarled, slamming his cup on the table. "You stole their property, human." Jace's eyes narrowed. "She's not property," he said coldly. "She's free," the alien growled. "That's not how it works. Earthmen, she has no name, no rights. No species that will claim her." A small crowd gathered. Syrah stepped backward, her breath shaking. This was her nightmare right here, in front of everyone. Voices louder than chains, eyes sharper than knives. But then Jace said something that silenced the entire room. "She's not a slave," he said, loud and clear. "She's my wife." The room went still. Even Syrah froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Wife." The spiked alien laughed, a joke. But Jace didn't smile. He stepped closer to the alien and said, "You touch her again, and I'll bury your bones in this desert." The alien backed off, muttering curses, and slowly the crowd thinned out. No one dared push him further outside. The sky turned dark with clouds as a rare storm rolled across the dunes. Back at the shelter, Syrah sat quietly, holding a cup of tea, her hands still trembling slightly. Jace didn't speak at first. He gave her space, letting her breathe. Then, finally, she whispered, "You called me your wife?" He looked over at her carefully. "Too much?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, very softly, "No. Just unexpected." He smiled gently. "I didn't say it for show," he said. "I meant it." Syrah looked at her hands again. "I don't know how to be one." "A wife," she said. "I was never taught love. I was only taught to obey, to suffer, to stay quiet." Jace leaned forward, voice calm. "Then forget everything they taught you," he said. "Start new with me. I don't want you to obey. I want you to live, laugh, choose." Tears welled in her eyes, but didn't fall. Not sad, not just to many feelings she didn't have names for. Hope, confusion, something warm. "You would really want me as that?" she asked, "as your equal?" Jace reached out. Not grabbing her, just letting his hand rest near hers. "I already do," he said. "No one gave you to me. You came into my life. That's different." She slowly placed her hand over his, and for the first time, her touch wasn't afraid. It was steady. That night, Syrah stood at the edge of the shelter, watching lightning flash far away over the desert. She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. She simply stood there like someone learning what it means to take up space in the world. Jace stepped beside her. "No more chains," he said softly. She nodded. "No more fear," she added. And then she reached up and touched his cheek, a small gesture, but full of meaning. "I still don't know what I am," she whispered, "but if I can be something, I want to be yours." Jace looked into her eyes. "You already are." The desert winds howled outside as if the planet itself was waking from a long nightmare. Inside the shelter, Jace packed his gear with quiet care. Beside him stood Cyranote, the same frightened girl who had once crawled in chains, but a woman. Now, standing tall, eyes clear, scars still visible, but no longer defining her, they were leaving. Not running, not hiding. They were heading back. To the place where it all began, to the very syndicate who once gifted her like a broken object. Jace didn't ask her to come. Syrah chose to. They arrived at the syndicate's stone compound by dusk. Alien guards watched them from above, confused. To see the prize walking freely beside the human, no collar, no chains, no liss-only confidence. The great doors opened with a growl of machines. Inside, the same alien leaders sat on golden thrones. Shocked, amused, curious, "You return." The commander grinned. "Did the reward break? Or did you come to return her?" Syrah stepped forward before Jace could speak. Her voice echoed across the hall, clear and powerful. "I was never your reward." She said, "You did not own me." Then, "And you do not now," gasps spread across the room. Some laughed, some scowled. One alien leaned forward. "And what are you now?" "A free stray following a human's orders." Syrah raised her chin. "No," she said. "I am his wife. A hush swept the room. Jace stepped forward beside her. "You gave her to humiliate me." "To remind me of your power," he said. "But I gave her back her name, her voice, her future." And now, Syrah added, her voice steady, "I stand not as a slave but as someone who chose him. The girl you gave away is gone. I buried her myself," the commander growled. "And what do you want, human?" "Nothing," Jace said, "except this. You don't get to own people anymore. You don't get to decide who matters and who doesn't." Laughter erupted from a few corners. "You think love will change us?" Someone shouted. "You think one broken girl and one stubborn human can challenge the galaxy?" Jace placed his arm gently around Syrah's shoulders. "No," he replied, "but it's a start." And then they turned their backs and walked away. They didn't fight, didn't beg. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming a soul. And Syrah had done just that. Weeks passed. The desert was behind them now, replaced by open skies and new worlds. Jace and Syrah traveled together not as fugitives, but as builders. They spoke to small colonies, to broken species, to others like her, victims of silence, of fear, of chains. Syrah's story spread not as a tale of pain but of power, of a woman who was once given as property, but who stood before her past and said, "I choose my life. One, choose my name. I choose love." One evening, beneath a quiet sky full of stars, Jace sat by a small fire with Syrah at his side. Her head rested against his shoulder, fingers laced with his. She looked up. "Watching the constellations. Do you think I'll ever stop remembering?" she asked. Jace thought for a moment. "No," he said, "but I think you'll remember new things too, like this moment." She smiled, soft, free. "Real. I was once chained," she whispered, "but now I wear only what I choose." Jace kissed her hand. "And you chose me?" She nodded, eyes gleaming. "Yes, and I would choose you again, even if I had 1,000 chances." Far away, the syndicate still ruled, still sold, still lied, but somewhere out there, they whispered about the human and the alien girl. The ones who didn't fight for power, but won something even stronger: dignity, freedom, and a love no chain could ever hold.